Okay, welcome everyone. Good morning, and thanks to all of you for joining us. I see a lot of familiar names and some new names that have joined us today. So thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for this Atlanta to Savannah stakeholder introduction meeting. I know people are still kind of trickling in, but we'll go ahead and get started just to stay on schedule and stay on track this morning. We're really pleased to see so many folks on the call this morning and so much interest from all of our stakeholders leading up to this call. This is our very first stakeholder meeting for the Atlanta to Savannah passenger rail study. The purpose of today's call is just to bring everyone together to introduce the Atlanta to Savannah project and really lay the groundwork for some more detailed discussions and smaller stakeholder committee meetings that will be coming up in the near future. So think of today as an introduction to the project team, an introduction to the project, and an opportunity to learn more about how to get engaged going forward. So a few, before we really get started, a few little housekeeping notes just on how we'll be conducting the meeting today. There is a Q&A function in Teams that you'll notice, so feel free to use that. Drop any questions or comments or thoughts that you have throughout the presentation in that box, and we'll reserve some time for answering and addressing those comments and questions at the end of the presentation. And of course, if we need to, we'll follow up with any additional questions after the meeting if we do run out of time. This presentation is being recorded, so we'll be sharing that recording and the materials with you all after this meeting and with those folks who weren't able to attend today who are on our stakeholder committees. So this might look like a webinar, but today is truly interactive. We will have several polling questions today using Mentimeter, and we'll give you some instructions later on how to use that. So please join in, participate in these polls. We really do want to get some input from you at this very early stage in our planning process. And lastly, but not least, please stay engaged after this meeting. So like I said, this is our very first stakeholder meeting. It's intended to introduce you as stakeholders to the project, give you some background information about the scope and about your involvement going forward. We will have plenty of additional meetings with smaller groups, smaller stakeholder committees in the near future. So look out for additional emails from this project email address that's on the screen. And emails from our project team and invitations to future events. So we look forward to keeping you guys engaged in this project as we move forward. And if your organization plans to delegate this to another member, or if you plan to share this with like to have other representatives from your agency participate, also send a quick email to this project email address on the screen just so we can keep our contact list up to date. Right. So today on the call, we have our GDOT project team. I'll do some quick introductions with those folks. These are going to be the faces that you'll be seeing throughout the life of this project. So Joanna Campbell, who is Assistant Division Director of Intermodal at GDOT. Phil Peavy, who's the Intermodal Planning Environmental Manager. And we have Caleb Stubbs, the Rail and Transit Planning Lead. And then we also have Clement Solomon, who's our Intermodal Division Director. And I'm Casey Mertz. I'm the lead for the consultant team. We also have, it looks like, plenty of stakeholder agencies represented on the call today. I'm just looking through the list of attendees really quickly. We did this first meeting, we intended to, cast a wide net. So we've got folks from state and federal agencies, freight railroads. We have Amtrak invited, some of our MPOs and regional commissions that touch the study area, as well as transit agencies and local planning agencies in the study area. And we've also invited other passenger rail stakeholders from neighboring states that have projects that have a really close nexus to ours. So as a quick way, an easy way to introduce all of you guys, we're going to do our first Mentimeter exercise. So Nick will set that up for us. So Mentimeter, you guys have probably seen this in some meetings before, very easy to use. We're going to be using this throughout the presentation today to get your input on a few questions and some input on some information that we'll be sharing. This first one will be a little test run for you all to use it, but also helps us see exactly who's on the call. So very easy to use. You can open a new web browser and go to menti.com. You can also use your phone and just, take a snapshot of that QR code that's on the screen. Then when you get to the page, it'll prompt you to put in a code, and you just use that code that's right there on the page. It is 97559971. We'll give everybody a second to get navigated to that. And if you do have any questions, or if you're having trouble accessing that, let us know in the Q&A. We'll try to get someone to help you out. Should be rather straightforward. When you do get there, Nick, if you want to go to the next page, the instructions and the code are still at the top. So if you still need it, it's still at the top of the slide. Our first Menti question here is straightforward. What type of stakeholder agency are you representing today? A lot of you are already answering, so you've already figured out the Mentimeter. That's great. Good wide distribution of folks. This is good. We've got a lot of MPOs and regional commissions, local planning agencies. If you are from another agency, if you wouldn't mind just dropping that in the Q&A and letting us know who you're with, that would be great for us to keep track of. We'll give everybody one more minute just to get their answers in. Yeah, 10 of you are from other types of agencies or organizations. So introduce yourselves in the Q&A for us so we know who's on. All right. This is good. This is a good cross section. So a lot of local planning agencies, regional commissions, MPOs, a few state agencies and transit providers, and several freight railroads representatives. So thank you all. Okay, this is a good first run of the Mentimeter. Keep this open. If you've got a separate browser window open, keep that open. We'll be coming back to it later on in the presentation. You guys did great on your first Mentimeter question. Thanks for participating. From here, I'm going to turn it on over to Phil Peavy to walk us through our meeting objectives for today.
All right, great. Thanks, Casey. And good morning, everyone. I'm Phil Peavy, and I'm the Planning and Environmental Manager for the Division of Intermodal. And so today I'm going to go over some of the objectives that we're going to try to accomplish today. And as mentioned earlier, this is the first stakeholder meeting for the Atlanta-Savannah project. And the purpose of the meeting is to bring the stakeholders together. We have approximately 320 agencies that have been invited to learn about the project scope and what to expect regarding engagement moving forward. So today we have three main objectives. Understand the project purpose, scope, and general schedule. Understand the stakeholder roles and prepare for more in-depth meetings in the future. And then finally, review the project's preliminary purpose statement and provide input. Also, please keep in mind we're early in the study and may not be able to answer all the questions outside of what we're presenting here today. So with that, let's get going. So what are we going to start off with? So what we're going to start off with is the 6 things that you need to know about the Atlanta-Savannah project. Now, the goal is to give everyone a strong baseline understanding of the project purpose, scope, and schedule. Now, the first thing to know is who's leading the study. Now, GDOT is the project lead. We're sponsoring the project and providing the state match for the federal earmark. Now, as mentioned in the beginning, we also plan to engage stakeholder organizations and get input and coordinate with other projects along the way. Before that, though, what is GDOT's role in rail planning? Now, in addition to the Atlanta-Savannah study, GDOT develops and updates the state rail plan every 4 years. We're actually currently doing this right now. So if you are interested in providing feedback on the state rail plan, please go to our website. We also complete other rail studies for both passenger and freight rail as needed. We participate in the Southeast Corridor Commission, where we coordinate with other states on intercity passenger rail. We're also the recipient of federal rail grants like this one, and then GDOT provides the state matching funds for these types of projects. Now, the second thing that you need to know is that this project has been accepted into the new Corridor ID program. Now, Corridor ID is a Federal Rail Administration-led program that sets standards for intercity passenger rail development. It also serves to build a pipeline of projects ready for implementation. Sponsors follow 3 primary steps for the ID process. With step 1 is initiating the scope, schedule, and budget to perform the service delivery plan. Now, GDOT has completed this step. And step 2 is developing an actual service development plan. And this is the step that we're in today. And then we have step 3, which is project development. Now, this step includes environmental review, design, and engineering. Now, at this time, no funding has been identified for this step of the project. Now, FRA does provide competitive funding opportunities for each of these steps and sets requirements for each step. Project sponsors must have FRA concurrence along the way before advancing to the next step. Next, we have number 3. Now, GDOT is coordinating with other Corridor ID projects in the Southeast, as well as other rail planning projects that have arisen recently. Now, due to the scale of this project, ongoing coordination with other projects in neighboring states will be essential. Now, there are 3 Corridor ID projects that terminate in Atlanta, and each of these is being led by a different agency. You have Atlanta-Savannah, which is being led by GDOT. We have the Atlanta to Charlotte project, which is being led by North Carolina DOT. And then we have the Atlanta, Chattanooga, Nashville, and Memphis, which is being led by the city of Chattanooga. Now, there's also an additional Corridor ID project in Florida that plans to connect Jacksonville, Orlando, and Miami. And we'll also coordinate with this project due to the proximity of Jacksonville with Savannah and the possibility of future connections. North Carolina DOT and their partners are continuing to develop rail service up the Southeast Corridor from Charlotte to Washington, D.C. And outside of Corridor ID, we'll coordinate with the FRA and Amtrak long distance study. Now, this study identifies several long distance routes in the Southeast, such as Atlanta, Birmingham, and Dallas. And there's the Atlanta Regional Commission, who is also conducting a study to relocate Atlanta Amtrak station, as well as coordinate. So we will coordinate closely with this one because it's probably going to impact the Atlanta terminal station location. So number 4, now the scope of this project is to create a service development plan. Now, this is also known as an STP, and to initiate the environmental process. So as mentioned earlier, the STP is defined by FRA in the Corridor ID program. Now, throughout this project, we will be following FRA's prescribed process and requirements for the service delivery plan. So what is an STP? Now, this is an in-depth planning study that covers a wide range of topics, including, but not limited to, defining the purpose and need, performing an alternative analysis, ridership and station market assessment, developing cost estimates along with a financial plan, exploring different governance strategies, and this is basically who will be responsible for operating and funding the system, determining preliminary environmental impacts, and then most importantly, developing a recommended service and implementation approach. Now, FRA is emphasizing the importance of phased implementation and identifying scalable solutions instead of large-scale projects. So this next slide that you're going to see provides a high-level look at our schedule for developing the STP. Now, this is subject to change as the study moves through the FRA process. The alternatives analysis and planning phases are currently underway and will be followed by the financial planning, governance, and developing a phased implementation plan. Now, we are planning to complete the STP at the end of 2027, and at this point, the environmental phase can start. Now, we do anticipate we have funding that can at least take it up to this point. Now, number 5. Now, the STP will evaluate a wide range of options between Atlanta and Savannah. We're intentionally starting with a large study area and will evaluate a wide variety of routes that will connect the 2 terminal cities. We also plan to evaluate how well the different routes meet the purpose and needs statement and other project goals. And the overall goal is that this will be a data-driven process. Now, we will be following methodologies that have been approved by FRA, We'll also rely on input from stakeholders and the public to influence the universe of options and evaluation criteria. In today's meeting and future stakeholder meetings will help drive this process. Now, as stated at the beginning of the presentation, we're early in the study process and specific routes and stations have not been determined yet. The goal is to identify possible stations as part of the STP. Now, the sixth and final thing to know is freight is important to the state and is vital to our economy. An ideal outcome of this project is a solution that provides value to both passenger and freight movement through our state and the Southeast. Freight railroads will be key stakeholders throughout this study. We'll coordinate with them and collect key information on current and future conditions that are essential to performing our planning analysis. And shared use corridors are common in intercity services across the country, but not necessarily occur with all the corridors. Now, this project will look for opportunities for infrastructure that both benefits freight and passenger rail. Now, with this, I'm going to turn it over to Casey, and she's going to give you more information about the purpose and need and the project goals. Casey?
Great. Thank you, Phil. So now that you've heard some basic information about the project scope and our process, we're going to share our preliminary purpose and need statement and our project goals that we've developed in coordination with FRA. So this is also a part of the presentation where we're going to ask for your input on these topics. Stakeholder input on our purpose and need is really essential at this stage, this early stage in the project. We want to ensure that we have a strong purpose and need statement and strong project goals that really reflect the study area. This step is also important because the purpose and need statement will carry through the life of this project and will play an important role later on when we do get to the NEPA process. It, of course, can be refined along the way as a result of stakeholder input like this meeting. The project goals are also really important because they're going to be informing our evaluation process and guiding planning decisions along the way. So we will use our project goals to develop metrics and evaluation criteria for our service development plan. All right. So first off is our preliminary purpose statement. So a good purpose and need or a good purpose statement rather should really focus on the positive outcomes of the project. So our preliminary purpose statement reads, the purpose of the project is to establish a safe, reliable, high capacity, and resilient intercity passenger rail service between the Atlanta and Savannah metro areas and travel markets in between. So now we'd like to hear from you. This is a really kind of short and succinct purpose statement, but we'd like to get your feedback on this before we go on to the next step, which will be the need statement. So after hearing this, what else do you think should be included? Did we miss any sort of key concepts or key buzzwords that you'd like us to consider? And this is going to be a free response going back to the Mentimeter. So if you just joined us on the last 10 minutes or so, we are using Mentimeter to do polling throughout this presentation. So the instructions are in that top bar at the top of your screen there. There's a web address, menti.com. When you get there, you'll be prompted to put in a code. So just put in that code that's at the top of the screen. And you can just do this in a separate browser or on your phone. And like I said, this is free response. So feel free to put in anything that you think we should be considering in our purpose statement. Once you type it in, it is going to be visible to everyone. So as you can see, we've got our first response up here. And then also, if you feel like you need to kind of, noodle on this a little bit and think about it and get back to us, you can use the Q&A throughout the meeting or send us an email later on, and we can take your input that way. And I'm going to read the statement back to you all so you can see it while you're thinking of your comments. The purpose of the project is to establish a safe, reliable, high capacity, and resilient intercity passenger rail service between the Atlanta and Savannah metro areas and travel markets in between. So it looks like we've gotten some comments. Station integration with urban fabric, supporting the surrounding community. Competitive selection of an operator. I've got some things on some comments about safety and economic development. Potentially high speed. clear and to the point. That's good feedback. Cost effective. Tying into the Southeast Corridor network, that's a really good one. Establish a corridor that would allow other bike ped uses like rail with trail, and focus on station markets that would have a strong need to travel to Atlanta and Savannah. Okay, several comments touching on economic development, high speed, competitive with driving is a pretty common comment. Historic tourism throughout Central Georgia, that's a good one. Purpose statement needs to include growth for freight customers. Residents and businesses, community to access multiple cities in the southeastern region. Strong demand. These are all really good additions. I think some of these themes and concepts we're going to be touching on in the goals and the needs. So these are good to hear at this point in time. And Clement, you got your hand raised, but you don't have to raise your hand. Go ahead.
Really quick, the Q&A function is not working. Could someone look into that, please?
Sure. Yeah, I am seeing several Q&As come out. The chat box is disabled, but there is a separate Q&A box that you can type questions into.
It's not working for some folks. It's not working for me. I tried it. It says it's not available for this event. Turn it on for meeting options. Learn more. So just FYI.
Got it. Thank you, Clement. We'll get somebody looking into that.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I think these are really good comments, some good concepts to consider. Nick, let's go on to the next part of this. I think we've got enough responses there. And of course, obviously, if you guys think of something later on when we send out the presentation, it's never too late to provide input on this stuff. So if you need a little more time to think through it, please do that. Okay, so the other half of the purpose and needs statement is, of course, the needs, which we're covering next. So we've grouped our preliminary need statements into 3 buckets. The first bucket is people and travel needs, which accommodates things like, or covers things like accommodating growth in population, employment, and travel demand, providing safe alternative travel modes, improving reliability, and multimodal connectivity. Next is an economic opportunities bucket, which addresses the need to support economic growth, access to business centers and other activity centers, and the need for supply chain resiliency, which is really important to Georgia's economy and our state's ability to do business. And then the third bucket is sustainability and resiliency. So this addresses the need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve energy efficiency, as well as bolstering our network resiliency. So in other words, resiliency is the ability to overcome major disruptions like extreme weather events. So now going back to our Mentimeter poll, we'd like your help in understanding the relative importance of those 3 categories of needs. So we're not necessarily asking you to weigh in on all of the specific details under each category, but here you'll use a slider bar on these to give us your general level of importance for each of these 3 categories of needs. And again, that's people and travel. So that's, how people are getting to, activity centers, reliability, safety, connectivity. Economic opportunities is the second bucket. So that's, supporting economic growth and business access. And then sustainability and resiliency. So this is thinking more about environmental sustainability, and the infrastructure, the resiliency of our infrastructure network. All right, so far economic opportunity is winning just by a hair. So generally people think that all three are generally important. The first two buckets, obviously the most important for the stakeholders on the call today. Great. Okay, I think that's a good number of responses, Nick. I think we can move on to the next one. All right, so now that we've talked through the preliminary purpose and need statements, we're getting into project goals. So we have developed 9 preliminary project goals. These have also been developed in conjunction with FRA, just like the purpose and need. So these goals are intended to be a little more specific than the purpose and need. So we're kind of driving more and more narrower as we progress here. And the project goals, the purpose of these is really to help drive our evaluation process. So these are going to be really important in evaluating alternatives later on in the process. So we'll kind of go over these really quickly, and then we'll get to a Mentimeter question that will get your help in prioritizing our project goals. So the first goal is supporting our growing regional travel demand and populations in the study area. Provide additional travel mode choice for Georgians, support regional and local economic development, enhance access to educational and employment opportunities, facilitate connections to existing multimodal networks like transit, airports, and other passenger rail services, leveraging existing transportation corridors, support efficient freight movement by minimizing or mitigating freight and rail passenger conflicts, engaging disadvantaged rural communities in an inclusive planning process, and finally, increasing resiliency in the transportation network. So I think from here, if we want to move on to the next Mentimeter. So now that you've seen the goals, they're listed here as well. In the Mentimeter, you'll be ranking these. So if you're on a desktop, I think you're just kind of dragging and dropping these boxes into the order that you see fit. If you're on your phone doing this, you might have to scroll a little bit down just to get just to see all of the options. So it might just take a little bit more scrolling on your mobile. But just we're asking for your priorities. So what do you think is most important to least important? And we'll give everyone a couple of minutes to get through this. This one's a little bit of a bigger ask in the Mentimeter, so we'll give you all a couple minutes to get your rankings together. All right, we've got some responses coming in. Additional transportation choice. Oh, there's some competition for first place. It's changing as we speak. Travel demand is consistently in the top 3-ish, and additional travel choice as well. Engaging disadvantaged and rural communities has a lot of support as well. Yeah, those 3 are, kind of changing roles for first place. Let's look down at the bottom. Leveraging existing transportation corridors has gotten the least priority from everyone so far. Resiliency, education, and employment are also towards the bottom. And if anybody has any, further context to why they chose, their top priority or their lowest priority, feel free to put that in the Q&A box as well. We'd love to hear some comments and commentary on why you chose the responses you did. That is always very helpful to us as a project team. Okay. It looks like the first three and the bottom three are pretty stable, and actually now it seems like all of the rankings are pretty stable. So supporting growing travel demand, additional transportation choice, and engaging disadvantaged and rural communities pretty consistently at the top. Resiliency and leveraging existing corridors towards the bottom. Great. All right. Well, thank you all. Let's move on to the next question. And I believe this is the last Mentimeter question. So this one's a little bit different. This is a trade-off question. So in planning, we often talk a lot about trade-offs and decision making. So this is really asking your preference between a rail service with faster travel times, but one that serves fewer stations versus a service that maybe has slower travel time but serves more stations. So of course, these things are often trade-offs. It's a trade-off between speed and access. So you can be at the far end of one end of the spectrum, or you can be somewhere in the middle. So you can use this slider tool to kind of show where you fall on this spectrum. And this is kind of a complex question. We'll give people a minute or so to answer this one as well. All right. You seem to be leaning towards faster service, fewer stations, but not entirely. It's kind of in the middle to left. And we've got 42 responses. That seems like a good number to move forward. So thank you guys for participating in that. This is really helpful. I know we're very early in the process, but it's nice to get a little bit of feedback at this really early stage, and we will definitely use this feedback to continue building out our future stakeholder meetings, and we hope to have much more detailed conversations with you all going forward. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Phil to talk about just that, what's ahead for our stakeholder groups.
All right, thanks, Casey, and thanks everyone for participating on these Mentimeter exercises and providing feedback. This is going to be great, and will help us determine what we do moving forward. Now, let's take a look ahead at what's in store for stakeholder engagement in the next year or so. Now, this project will require coordination with a wide variety of stakeholders, and we're now organizing it into 6 stakeholder committees. Each committee will have a specific role and will engage at appropriate times during the study. First, we have the freight railroads. Now, this will require early and ongoing coordination, particularly to share data on possible shared use corridors. We have our passenger rail stakeholders. Now, this group includes passenger rail carriers as well as other corridor ID project sponsors that we're coordinating with. Next, we have our state and federal agencies. Now, this includes agencies like FRA, FTA, FHWA on the federal side, DCA, DCH, Economic Development on the state side, as well as a number of other state and federal agencies. We have our urban and rural stakeholder agencies. Now, this is a broad group that includes local and regional planning agencies and transit operators throughout the study area. Now, these members will help us coordinate with local and regional plans and help inform on station area planning. Next, we have our elected officials. Now, elected officials will play an important role in the project. Now, their input will be particularly important when we discuss financial planning and governance strategies. And then finally, we have public outreach. Now, there will be opportunities for the general public to engage at key milestones. We're holding our first public meeting and public survey later this year. There'll also be additional groups that we'll identify along the way. So feel free to let us know if there are any others that you think we should be speaking with. Now, this next slide is going to give you a very general schedule for stakeholder and public meetings over the course of the study. And we're right here at the beginning of 2025, holding the first stakeholder meeting. Now, this will kick off a series of additional stakeholder committee meetings where we will dive into more details on the project with each of the stakeholder groups. So what's next? Now, after the stakeholder meeting, we will continue to coordinate with our rail stakeholders one-on-one and continue ongoing coordination with our corridor ID partners in other states. We'll also start scheduling future stakeholder committee meetings with small groups to continue this discussion. Now, for public information and engagement, our project website contains general information, FAQs, and a schedule. Now, this meeting will be posted online so that the public has access to the same information we share here. A short public survey will also be posted after this meeting, and this will be followed by a more detailed travel survey and public meeting happening later this year. So now at this time, we'd like to open up to questions from the Q&A. Now, please know that if we don't have time to answer your question today, we'll be happy to respond via email at a later time.
Great. Yeah. So we're going to switch over to the Q&A and see what questions have come up. I might not get all of these in the right order since they seem to be popping in. So I guess the first question is, would joining an interstate compact like the Southern Rail Commission promote coordination with other states for interstate corridors?
We're coordinating with the other states at this time, so I don't really think we need a compact for additional coordination. We're working with them regularly right now.
Yes, and yes, for this planning study, certainly. And I think that is probably something that the governance task later on in the STP process would explore if it's possible or if it's necessary. Let's see, some comments from Jason Lathbury. Speed and number of stations, not necessarily mutually exclusive. Also, some of the goals that we're ranking, not necessarily mutually exclusive. So that's a valid comment. And Jason, if you have any other input on those Menti questions, feel free to let us know. And then a comment, balance is necessary to address the number 3 top priority regarding disadvantaged rural communities. So yeah, I think that was Bill's comment. I think that's in reference to the speed versus access, kind of being somewhere balanced in the middle to serve some of those rural communities. And then a question from Micah. Any chance that both a multi-stop transit car and a minimal stop long travel car would be able to run on same line on these lines?
At this stage of the study, we haven't really looked at what the type of technology we'll be using, so that's something we can consider.
Will the stakeholder meetings normally be online?
Yes, at this time, we're looking at having them virtual. There may be some in-person meetings, and we do in person, we'll notify you of that later on. But especially with the weather happening and the events that have happened lately, virtual has been an option we've continued to have to go to get the most people and to get the most feedback from on the information we're looking for the study. So virtual's been a huge help in getting everyone together.
And then a question from Robert Reichert asking about a timeline for implementation of passenger rail.
Yeah, I mean, right now the only timeline we have is completing the service development plan. So once we complete that, it will include some additional scheduling information.
And then another comment asking to look at layered service approach with regional and commuter rail near metro areas, local trains stopping at every station, and express trains stopping at major stations.
Okay, great.
And that is all of the Q&A that I'm seeing right now.
All right, well, great. Thank you everyone for participating today. If you do have additional questions or comments after the meeting, please use the contact information on the screen to email us your comments. We'll also plan to have a map up in the next few weeks that allow you to leave specific comments or comments at specific locations. So at this time, I just want to thank you for attending the meeting this morning and have a great day. Thank you very much.